Hi guys, George with Troglodyne here to talk about the changes in the playwright-perl module that have come through the pipe since I last made a video on this stuff. Without any further ado, let's hop into it. So the biggest things that have changed are going to be from a developer point of view, what it takes for you to work on the module, submit patches, things like that. So inside of the readme.md, I've updated everything you need to know. The long and short of it is if you can actually do a diesel test, everything is ready for you. And then you're going to have to run two scripts, which are generate API JSON.sh and generate perl modules.pl. Let's actually hop in and take a look at what those look like. So as you can see here, this is the generate API JSON. Essentially, it's going to rely on you actually having the Playwright upstream module cloned in a directory that is, right next to where you've cloned playwright-perl. And so what it's going to do is it's going to generate the API JSON, and then it's going to actually insert this inside of the Playwright server that we actually end up shipping to clients. So take a look over here. Playwright server, and you can see down here there's a little replace me, right? So that's where all that is going to end up going. So that way we don't actually have to track the API JSON inside of the repository. We just ship it whenever we actually build the module. So let's take a look at actually when we generate the Perl module. So used to what we would do is we would use sub install, and that would make everything built at runtime, everything worked. But the problem with that was that you couldn't do something like wrap it inside of a closure with moo to do a simple subclass that allows you to do around or any of those other nice, mop sort of functionalities around this like you would with Selenium Remote Driver because it's already built with moo. I didn't want the kind of overhead. I wanted all that to be optional. So this is a way to make sure that that all works out together. And to be fair, since I've had to ship the API JSON anyway, I probably should be doing new releases of the playwright-perl module every time the upstream releases a new version anyway. So going to a static generation is not really going to add me any extra maintenance headaches, especially the way that I've set it up, which we'll get into later. But as you can see, it's a fairly straightforward thing. Basically, we just read the data section down here at the bottom, which is a template for the actual module itself for every single different Playwright class. And then aside from that, we generate a little module list class that we actually include that'll slurp in all the child classes so playwright.pm actually knows what to do. It's all basically your standard kind of I'm setting a bunch of different stuff. And then whenever we're done, we go ahead and clean everything up so that we don't leave around garbage and so forth as part of the diesel build process, which, as you can see here, basically we're using the run before build and run after build functionality inside of Dizilla to deal with all this sort of stuff. So the other nice thing is, as you can see here, I'm actually running the example.pl, which is sort of the acceptance test that I use to make sure that things are actually working. Let's pop that open here. And as you can see, basically it exercises the entirety of the Playwright API that you actually would care about. Takes screenshots, takes videos, does downloads, awaits on things, all those sorts of things. And I built a long time ago for Selenium Remote Driver a set of pages that basically have every type of interactable element you can actually build in HTML on them. About the only things it doesn't have is some of the newer things like video and audio controls, which I probably should add. That would be a lot of fun. In any case, it's good enough for developing modules and so forth like that for the moment. So as long as this thing runs and it doesn't explode, I can have a reasonably good idea that things work aside from the normal unit tests and stuff like that. So aside from that, there's a few little things about the actual Playwright module itself that have changed and the Playwright server. So these are both to deal with some user-facing changes rather than developer-facing changes. So let's actually hop into those. So when we look now on the Playwright documentation, you can see here we've added a few sections here on as notes. So you can see I had a user had some issues dealing with Firefox, and I've given them a little idea on how you can actually interact with pages that give you PDFs, which, obviously you should just download it and then transform it with GS or do whatever the heck you need to do with it rather than actually trying to fiddle with the PDF.js stuff. So that's a good idea on how to actually do that. I believe Chrome does the right thing by default and just downloads it, but I may be wrong there. Anyways, so we also had another request to leave browsers alive for manual debugging. And so what I've done is I've added a constructor parameter, which I believe is cleanup to the new method. And then that'll prevent destroy from actually firing and killing any of the Playwright servers. So one thing to note as if you do this as a user, when you pass debug, the messages from the server will be suppressed so that it doesn't just print garbage in your output if there's, say, for example, another Playwright process talking to that browser. So just to make life easier on users, I've added a little script called reap playwright servers. We can take a look at that real quick here. And basically all that does is it looks at the process table, it finds out any Playwright server instance, and it goes and issues it a shutdown command, and it goes and dutifully terminates itself. So that should help you to investigate issues where it's like, I was running, everything exploded because it was touching some piece of DOM that decided to slip out from under it and not exist anymore because you've got a clever designer that likes to make pop-up menus that disappear on hover, things like that. So other than that, there's another change. Someone wanted to be able to actually grab the PID of the browser so that they could, do naughty things with it and so forth. And the way that you do that in Playwright upstream is you launch a browser server and then you actually connect to the WebSocket that is the browser server rather than the sort of simplified method, which is just launching a browser, right? And so what we did was we changed Playwright server internally to do just that. Let's hop back here and I'll show you sort of what that looks like. WS, or, well, let's go to launch. I believe that's the method I called. So yeah, you look here and we're doing launch server. Basically, instead of doing what we did, which was just a launch, we do launch server, and then we make the actual launch server a component of the browser object, which we can then interrogate later to do stuff, which I'll show you the method here that is relevant for that. The server method, basically, you can call the browser server methods and so forth to get all that stuff. Here's an example of you actually grabbing the browser PID for all that stuff. This is also inside of the example.pl if you want to see a practical, in fact, working version of that. But that's the point, is that we've changed the way that we're actually launching Playwright browsers so that we can actually get more information about that. But it has a significant limitation, which is noted here in the taking videos, making downloads section. So there is a way that you can basically just say, I want a path where the video is going to be saved, and it'll just make me a name and it'll be done, right? That allows you to not actually worry about having to do an await on the video to save, and it's the same thing with downloads. You could do that if you are not using the browser server method, but for whatever reason in the Playwright ecosystem, or whatever reason they've decided to do it, you can't actually do that when you're launching via browser server. But the point is, you can still do save as, which works just fine, so it's not a big deal. When you're doing video, you're going to need to wait until the page is closed, or just about right up to it, so that you don't end up getting, just hanging there waiting for a video to save, but it won't save because the page hasn't been closed yet. And it's a similar story with download classes and so forth. Basically, you just need to make sure and do your wait for event on a download, do whatever it is that actually triggers the download, and then you'll go ahead and await that. You'll get download object, and then you need to save it as rather than relying on a path or anything like that. So I believe that is everything that is majorly important. There might be one or two little things, but nothing that's really going to hurt people's day-to-day usage of this. Well, if you enjoy the module and you have any other requests of me, feel free to hop into the Playwright channel, playwright-perl on the Slack for Playwright, or just send me an email or go ahead and log a bug on the tracker. I'm always happy to help out with all this stuff because any day I'm not using Selenium is a day I'm a happy guy. Which, speaking of, I probably will take a look finally at making Selenium Client the backend for Selenium Remote Driver so it actually understands how to deal with Selenium 4. But it's all time dependent, and I have hopefully got some good spare time coming up soon, but it's not exactly high on my priority list. So we'll see, and I'll see you later.